Fire Rays. By Osé Dergriff, dedicated to young minds. It was a bright and generous day, the sort of day that seemed made for washing. Pilgrim had just turned to go back inside when he noticed it, a yellowish cast stealing over the sky, dimming its clean brightness. He paused. There was nothing unfamiliar about it. In fact, it was a sight too well known. Still, this time he wanted to believe he was mistaken. Not now, he thought, not today. But hope, as he knew, does not always alter fact. It was the second week in April, and the sugarcane harvest was already some 6 weeks advanced. At that time of year, fires appeared as though they had been appointed to the season. If it was not the canes, it was the grass piece, as Barbadians called those open stretches of dry land that waited like tinder beneath the sun. It was a busy time for the fire department, and for everyone else a time of uneasy watching. To wish such things away was only another name for helplessness. It was a busy time for the fire department, and for everyone else a time of uneasy watching. To wish such things away was only another name for helplessness. Then came the proof. A burnt blade of grass, blackened and curled by flame, drifted lazily down from the air and landed upon Pilgrim's only white shirt, the very one he had just hung on the line. And with that, another thought rose in him, one heavier than ash, one older than the season's fires, bound up in a phrase he knew too well: fire rays. It was a colloquial saying, but like many such sayings, it carried more truth than refinement. It spoke of that dark practice by which people, often in positions to affect the lives of others, became prejudiced against a person they hardly knew. Their minds first ignited by whisperers of doubtful integrity, men and women who planted impressions as carelessly as others dropped matches. And once lit, such fires seldom remained small. It was evil with a long life. For men of character have always understood that the character of another human being is not a trifle. It is not a rumor to be passed around, nor a shadow to be shaped by hostile tongues. A man's character is personal. He alone, under God and through his choices, gives it form. He alone writes its true testimony. Others may observe it, yes. They may weigh it, interpret it, respond to it. But the sincere do not borrow their conscience from hearsay. They watch, they listen, they learn for themselves. Then they give trust or withhold it according to what they themselves have seen. Pilgrim knew this was true. He had lived long enough to know that respect honestly formed is one thing, but bias inherited is another. And such bias did not only wound its target, it also crippled the one who carried it. For when a man has accepted a poisoned account of another, he begins to lose the ability to see clearly. Goodness becomes invisible to him. Wisdom becomes suspicious. Authority becomes offensive. He is no longer judging what is before him. He is only reacting to what was first poured into him. An illustration came to Pilgrim, as illustrations often do when truth asks to be seen rather than merely stated. There was once a youth, fresh out of school, who entered an apprenticeship. That alone said something worthy. It spoke of beginning, of submission to process, of the quiet dignity of learning. It set in place the proper order: youth and mentor, beginner and guide, promise and formation. But before the lad could settle into the wisdom of that order, a serpent came near. Of the foreman, the serpent whispered what it thought the boy ought to know, that the man held a position for which he was not truly qualified. Then, with poisonous subtlety, it pointed to another, the next most senior worker, and suggested that he was the one more suited to the place. Pilgrim saw the danger in it at once. A conversation with a serpent is dangerous under any circumstance. But when the serpent is shaping the mind of a child, the danger deepens. For youth is naturally impressionable, and pride often arrives before discernment. It did not surprise Pilgrim, then, to hear that the youth eventually challenged the foreman over a decision, yet scarcely had the challenge escaped him before he began to see his folly. The confidence that had surged so quickly was checked just as quickly. Shame and self-preservation combined to quiet what arrogance had stirred, for the foreman knew more than he, and he, for all his energy, was still but a lad. Time moved on, as time does, and with it came understanding. One day the youth heard words from the foreman's own mouth, words that would remain with him long after the moment passed. "I cannot bend an old tree. I am training you to be a foreman." It was not merely instruction, it was revelation. Along the way, there were still moments when the young man's views differed from the foreman's. That is the nature of growth. But difference did not cancel order. Thought did not erase station. The foreman remained the foreman. And so it came to pass, unsurprisingly, that the day arrived when the foreman handed him his diary and asked him to write the monthly report. By then, other voices were still present, still eager to intrude. "You are not paid to do that." But by then, the youth had become wiser. Time had done what rebuke alone could not do. Maturity had opened what pride had closed. He now understood that he was not being used, he was being prepared. He was not losing, he was receiving. He was a student, and he had no intention of wasting the opportunity to become more than he presently was, and so the years fulfilled their quiet work. The foreman eventually resigned. The youth, by then a man, continued onward, and as life would have it, he himself rose in time to a position higher than any occupied by those whose opinions had once loomed so large in his hearing. Thus the serpent, for all its whispering, was proved a poor prophet. Pilgrim counted it a fortunate thing that he later heard that same man counseling his own son. There was weight in his voice now, the kind that comes only when experience has burned away vanity and left wisdom in its place. He said to him, "It pays to respect your elders. Beware of the serpent. Avoid the conversation if you can, and never let anyone think for you." And Pilgrim, standing there between the scorched shirt on the line and the smoke-stained sky above him, felt again how strange it was that fire could teach in more ways than one. There was the fire that blackened fields and soiled white cloth, and there was the other fire, more destructive still, the one men kindled in the minds of others against those they had never truly known. One left ash, the other, if unchecked, could disfigure destiny,